brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to another famous, award-winning Suds segment where we are particularly excited about what we are going to talk about today.
That's how excited I am.
Wow.
Just so you guys know.
And we are very particularly excited about the beers that we drink in general. They absolutely have to be within arm's reach. That's a fact.
Sure.
And I think we got plenty at arm's reach today, wouldn't you say? Joining me at the table today is good old boy Caperton.
Oh, hello, everyone. This may be the first time I was first.
Yes.
I'm just seated I'm right next to you. Hi, everyone.
Reverend Mark.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here on this beautiful day with great people.
Yay. Yeah. Good old boy Kendall.
It's one of my favorite times of the year. I'm looking forward to sharing this with y'all.
I know. Yeah. Good old boy Dave.
Let's get this over with.
Only you would say that. All right.
He did.
Well, I am good old gal Juliana, and
that's what she said.
Exactly. And not to age me, but like I'm feeling like that moment from Highlander movie where it's like we're getting ready for the gathering and all these. Okay, does anyone ever
like
remember?
A hot flash?
Yeah, I remember. Kind of remember. That was Sean Connery.
Yes.
R.I.P.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And the characters that are still alive are getting together for like the final battle, the final countdown.
Mm.
Yeah, and I feel like it's that because it's the final countdown of the best beers, of the year.
Yeah. I'm going to work in like a British pop metal reference to this.
Whatever.
Final countdown.
Who was that?
Europe.
Such a terrible song.
With such a outstanding name of a band. Yeah. Anyways.
They were pretty big. Not as big as Asia.
You're on fire today. That's well deserved.
And the hits just keep on coming.
That was for you.
That's good. That was good.
All right. 2020. It's been a year of politics, protests, and a pandemic.
Boy.
COVID-19 has touched all of us and touched our lives in ways none of us could have predicted. Not despite, but because of all the losses, challenges, and hardships, we found new ways to come together. And whether we're masked up 6 feet apart or talking over each other on a Zoom meeting, we're still staying connected, and thank God for that. And hey, despite it all, we've still got beer.
Yay.
And thank you to all the breweries out there that, in spite of everything, have been making this fine elixir of life, which has helped keep us going.
I think they've done great industry-wide.
Yes,
really,
yes. I mean, you talk about heroes, man, the brewers are the heroes.
And the ones who are making crappy beer, we're going to give you a pass.
Yeah. You get this year off.
Yeah, this is the one. This is your one.
This is your pass.
Yeah, the beer metrics have been lowered, and we're glad you're here if you're here.
But I do think the craft beer industry deserves a tip of the hat.
Absolutely.
You've seen it really sort of stepping up to these problems, trying to work a way around them.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of breweries doing a lot of interesting things just to try to stay in business, just to keep the doors open. I mean, one of my favorite local breweries brought beer to my house. I mean, that home delivery was maybe the best thing about 2020.
And I think you're going to see a lot of that, of innovations that have come through all
That'll be interesting to see how much of this stuff stays. Yeah.
Well, before we today we're going to be celebrating our best of 2020 in all ways. But before we get into all of that, this Sud segment is brought to you by
Odoron. Hey, it's a new world out there and new rules apply. You want to be a good citizen and you want to follow the rules, but sometimes it's hard to keep the distance in social distancing. That's where Odoron comes in. This deodorant, odorant, doesn't come in traditional scents like baby powder or spring rain. Odoron comes in scents like sweaty socks, sour milk, and my favorite, hint o' vomit. Woo, that's pungent. So when you're ready to get out of the house but you want to keep that 6-foot perimeter, wear the spray that makes them stay away. Odoron.
Well, we haven't been able to go to beer fests, tap rooms, or bottle shares as much this year. No. But just as breweries have shown their resiliency and kept beer brewing and brewing beer, we on this show have remained dedicated to our mission to try as many new beers as possible. Each host has looked back and pick something that stood out to them. We'll talk about those beers and share any that we have on hand. We'll also hear from some of the hosts who couldn't be with us today. Before we get started, however, good old boy Kendall, please give us the Suds ratings for today.
We'll be discussing and rating these beers with these Suds ratings, plus our signature belching sounds. Here are those ratings now. That sucks. Give me anything but a bud. I just realized I didn't give the number. That's 1.
That was 1.
So, well, it's not like I haven't screwed these up before.
Attaboy.
Number 2. Was that a belch?
See, I'm screwing it up too.
Was it?
Number 3. What a relief.
This is actually our first episode ever.
Number 4. A body should really not make that sound. And 5. Listen to that hang time. Give me another.
Okay, so amongst all of our conversations today, let's get to the beer first.
All right.
Yes.
Good old boy Kendall, why don't you tell us what was your favorite of the year?
Well, this time of the year is a time to celebrate. So it's been a weird year for me, and it's been a weird year for everybody, but usually my number one beer, the top beer, is something I've experienced in my broad beer travels. You know, I get to travel. I used to get to travel a lot, to go to a lot of different beer events all over the country and taste a lot of amazing beer. That hasn't happened this year. I have drank a lot of amazing beer locally, drink lots of good beer from Nashville brewers, but not got out there like I used to. So this year, when the Sierra Nevada celebration hit the stores in mid-October, I got really excited. I love this beer, and this is a beer many beer fans love and know. They wait for celebration to come out. This is Sierra's fall seasonal. It is so good. Big caramelly notes balanced with big piney and citrusy hop notes. The bitterness and the maltiness of this work so well together, and I'm kind of glad they don't make this year round because it is so special when it does come out. And I know I've probably gone through at least 5 or 6 six-packs of this. Of course, sharing with friends, of course.
Yeah.
But I have bought a lot of Celebration this year, and it's such a beautiful, wonderful beer. And when I had to think about what was my beer of the year this year, this is it.
It's just so satisfying. Oh my God, it's the best thing ever.
And, to me, this is a 5. I might get some disputation from that, but
not at this table, buddy.
I've got a rule, and that rule is I don't disagree with Kendall when he's right. This beer comes out. You can start seeing it in some stores early October. It's everywhere in November into December. When you're listening to this show, there still might be some on the shelves. A lot of times it doesn't last past New Year's, but sometimes you can find it if you look for it into January.
There are a lot of dumb people in your town. There'll be some left over.
And it shelves reasonably well. It's a big beer, so it stands the test.
But this beer is wonderful. I look forward to it every year. And what was so great about having it this year is the year's almost over. I'm ready for 2020 to be done.
Yep. I think I would like to say, Kendall,
Kendall's right. I think it bears to point out that he used a lot of sort of semi-scary words there, like big pint. I think this beer is so drinkable, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, like those things are all true, but it's such a drinkable.
What's the ABV?
It's like 6.5.
Okay,
I believe.
6.8. You're close.
6.8,
yeah.
It's just
perfect.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, this is gold standard stuff. Yeah, this is a beer to judge beers by. Actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with this. I mean, and I have been buying a case of Celebration every year, at least a case when it comes out for 20 years. I mean, it's just been, and at one time that was like one of the only holiday beers, among two or three that you would find.
Yeah.
But
he buys a case, he only drinks one of them. It's weird.
Yeah. And it's just there's an elegance to it. There's a simplicity in a certain way. I know that they use the 3 C's on their hops: the Centennial, Chinook, and Cascade. It's a classic West Coast IPA in every best sense. And even though it's got a great caramel color, it's not too heavy.
Well, I think that gives it the seasonal sort of quality that it has.
Exactly.
It's sort of a fall/winter.
It's
beer.
a little more caramelly than say Torpedo, which is they're all around big IPA.
Yeah.
That's a rough one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good.
It's a great beer, but this is way more drinkable.
Yeah.
No, this is great.
Like the name says.
Yeah, and in a year where things have not been normal and we've all had to, shift gears, modulate, and go and fly off the cuff, hats off.
Yeah,
to
we
Sierra
could all
Nevada.
use a little celebration.
Well, exactly, and for maintaining that consistency that helps us realize that yes, this year is almost through, and we are getting through it.
It's just a little bit of normalness from a year.
It's a connotation of continuation, that things are still connected somehow.
Yes. Well, Kendall, thanks for bringing this.
Good beer.
We'll be back in a minute with more beer. Welcome back, everyone. So today is a very special episode for us. It's our year-end, beer and review, our best beers of the year. Next, we are going to hear from Reverend Mark. What was your favorite beer of the year?
Well, and there have been several that have been just sort of like my cellar beers that I've kept close, and we've all been staying at home more than not. And so to me, kind of the rule of craft beer and it's sort of the quintessence of craft beer is that you enjoy it local and fresh. And this is about as local and fresh as you can get. It's from East Tennessee, but not that far down the road. And it's the Blackberry Farm IPA. It's an unfiltered IPA. You might want to, I know it's considered a bi-coastal in that it's a little bit hazy, but it's not the NEPA haze to it. And I also just, have to give a shout out to Travis Hickson, who is the brewmeister at Blackberry Farm. Just doing tremendous work. And I first sampled this in their actual brewery, this summer. And also kudos to them for managing their tap room in a socially distanced and safe way. They did really good work along those lines. This is a beer that's also fermented from what Travis is telling me at a low ambient temperature with Kolsch yeast.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And so you get a little bit of pear notes in this, And he couldn't give me all the proprietary information about everything, but there's at least 6 different kinds of hops in this, and they whirlpool it all in the end. 3 of the hops that I know about are Citra, Mosaic, and Galaxy. And it's just, it's like right at 7%, 60 IBUs, and it has been my go-to beer. I mean, I brew my own beer, which I like most of the time.
Yep.
But this has been the 6-pack after 6-pack that I just have to drive a quarter mile down the road and find it.
It's in the grocery store.
Yeah. So, and this is my
in this area.
In
this area. Yeah.
And there have been several others, but this is the one that I definitely would give a 5 to.
Yeah. Awesome. I agree.
No argument.
I
there's some great flavor.
I agree, Reverend Mark. This is a great beer. In fact, I was able to catch up with some buddies. We built the fire and all sat like 10 feet apart around the fire. And I took my little cooler bag. I had Celebration and Blackberry Farm IPA in it. So I think this beer stands up nearly just as good as what I brought to the table today. I love this IPA.
Yeah.
It's a great one for
and
sure.
this one's lighter. It's a light beer. I mean, it has no crystal malt to it, and so those hops pop even more so. Yeah. I'm just and from what I understand, the sales of this are just spiraling
good
in a very profitable direction.
They've grown their brand away from just
the
saisons, which I love. Don't get me wrong; those are world class saisons, but they bring that same sort of world class attitude that everything Blackberry Farm related.
Well, just the way he said they make it too shows like some innovation.
They're not. They're not halfway guys.
True that.
No, and it's interesting to me that every one of their beers, no matter how big, no matter how bold they are, there's still this delicacy to them that I really absolutely love. I mean, when I think of
classy beers,
when I think of artisanal,
like the resort,
they're classy. When I think of artisanal, I think of Blackberry Farms.
And that's their
and everything
approach.
That they do. And I'm so happy that they're able to thrive, in this.
Their Pilsner, I'm going to mention it just real quick. I mean, it's the same deal. I mean, we could not keep it on the shelf here locally. I mean, it was hard
to find because it sold so fast.
It was so good.
Yeah.
This was a year of good Pilsners, though.
Yeah, it was.
But kudos to Blackberry Farms and what they're doing. And thank you, Reverend Mark, for bringing this.
Glad to share it.
Yeah.
So next up, we're going to hear from another one of our co-hosts and their best of 2020.
Good old boy Tim here with the Sip, Suds, and Smokes Best of 2020 Sud segment. We've got another year in the books and another year of my continued love affair with everything coming out of Zebulon Artisan Ales in Weaverville, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville. My pick this year is the Bière de Coupage, or as we call it in Tennessee, Bière de Cuppage. This beer is a 50-50 blend of a double dry hop saison and a 2-year barrel-aged sour ale fermented with a wild Asheville culture. First time I had this beer and the 10th time I had it. It just has a great sour flavor. It's nice and light on the body, but it has a noticeable funk and super bright flavors of lemon and stone fruit. The end result is a complex beer that goes down way too easily. What I really love about this beer is also what I love about Zebulon, and it's just a perfect example of them kind of marrying old and young traditions. They certainly do a lot of beers that recreate historical styles from the 1800s or even earlier, but where I think they really shine is taking those techniques and marrying them with some of the more modern current trends we have, like double dry hopping and isolating local cultures and other cool experimental stuff in the beer world. If you find yourself in the Asheville area or even somewhere in North Carolina, you would do your best to look for this Bière de Coupage on the shelf and also send me a message because I need a couple more bottles as I drank them all. Cheers.
Well, that was a great pick, wasn't it?
That was.
Moving on. Let's talk about good old boy Caperton.
Caperton.
Yeah, so like everybody else has already mentioned, it's been a tough year. My beer drinking habits have been off kilter. I've been drinking
get worse
from
before
my
it gets better.
Exactly. Feels that way. It actually feels like it's getting better. But I've been drinking from a cellar. I've been drinking a lot of great beers locally, and then two trips actually to North Carolina. I broke my hand on one and didn't do a whole lot.
You should see the other guy.
Yeah, it was a blast. But went back sort of as a do-over, and I picked up some great beers, and I picked this one up. And I've got several really great beers that I brought today. This is the one that I would pick though as a sort of go-to. It's Fontaflora Erde.
Nice name.
Like every day.
This is a very beautiful beer.
So this is 3%. You guys can check me on that. I don't have my glasses on. They don't have a whole lot of information. It's Fooder fermented table beer, mixed culture.
So good.
That and so I'm like, it reflects my drinking habits. Like, I don't like boozy beers as much as I do beers like this that I can just enjoy and not have to worry about getting all hammered. And it's, dude, I mean, I was camping when I went to the farm and bought these, and it was perfect. I mean, I drank.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I drank so much of this, and it's changed a little bit since then. I think I wish I had some bottles I'd read some reviews from locals that said, yeah, if you sit on this beer, it just turns into something crazy good. But,
it hatches into something.
I give it a 5. I mean, I would give several beers. I could think of a few honorable mentions. Zebulon's Bière de Coupage, Embrace the Funk's Fall Saison. Again, I think every town in America right now during this weird period of our history, has more time on their hands. They're making smaller batches. They're making more creative batches. It's pushed them to think outside the box.
Yeah.
I think it's that a lot of towns have a lot of 5 beers.
A lot of people are having to get more creative with their budget and the ingredients.
But those beers are smaller batches. They're not going to distribution. You got to live there, and that's unfortunate. But some of these beers,
it's
are
like you're
just
lucky
amazing.
if you're around there or you're willing to go there.
Yeah, craft beer creativity's gone off the charts this year.
Yeah. Which is another, I mean, it's a silver lining for
sure.
the insanity of this year. But,
This one is great. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, good.
It's,
I haven't even tasted it. I'm glad you guys liked it.
Beautiful.
Do you have another one that you're letting age?
It's a green. No, this was my last bottle.
No.
This is my last bottle. It's a green 12-ounce long neck. I mean, come on. I mean, that's
Simplicity at its
they're
best.
smacking me in the head.
Dude.
It's like, take my money.
Yeah. No, exactly. But the simplicity of this beer and the flavor for it only being 3-ish percent ABV.
I wish we had more of it. It's got a great mouthfeel.
It does.
To be 3%. I mean, it's just really nice.
These little Belgian table beers.
So a little sourness, a little funkiness. I guess the funk really kind of comes to the front as you age these beers. So, yeah.
But it really makes me feel like I'm on the field in France.
Good. I'm glad you guys like it.
You know what I
loved
mean?
it too.
And just enjoying the simplicity of everyday life, because at the end of the day, with all the stuff that's going on in the universe, having something that's just simple and beautiful.
I was going to say, I bet sitting by the campfire, just kind of chilling, pop open a couple bottles of this. I mean, unless it's a 12-ounce bottle too, dude. I mean, you can sit there
crush
and enjoy
these.
it.
Yeah.
Their rice lagered saison. I'm going to throw that into.
That was fantastic.
Fantastic. Gold was a great beer for Fontaflora too.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, they're doing some really good stuff.
Folks, if you haven't made it out to Fontaflora or found any Fontaflora beers, you owe it to yourself as beer lovers
Just
to check them out.
North Carolina. You need to do a beer trip to North Carolina.
Exactly.
The farm is pretty cool. I was walking around. They didn't have tours or anything, pandemic, but they had the doors, they had the garage doors open, and I walked around the back. And there was just a couple of guys back there, like hand bottling beers.
Nice.
I was just like,
there you go.
Yep. What you would expect, kind of,
Yeah,
hey,
it
boys.
was really nice, though. Nice setup they have there for sure.
Great
Very reflective of North Carolina. Hats off to that state.
Yeah, sure. And hopefully next year we can have a Fontaflora Fest,
Yeah.
Because I really dug that and dug everything about
nice.
them. Anyways, well, thank you very much.
Good.
Good old boy Dave, why don't you talk about your best of?
All right, so this is a beer we covered in one of our Is It Worth It episodes, and we were talking about like wild, funky, sour beers, and this one was actually from a local brewery, Southern Grist, and it didn't have candy in it, and it didn't.
It's unusual for that.
Yeah, it wasn't named
Yeah.
after a breakfast cereal, so
It's
that was
not
odd.
a breakfast sour.
This was actually called Perpetual Composition. It's a 5.2% Solera style foeder beer, aged 7 months in a French Bordeaux, or as I like to say, Bordeaux foeder with our mixed culture, and then bottle conditioned.
There you go. So you're probably going to say it that this wasn't their first beer where they let the yeast. They do this beer.
Yeah.
This brewery's known for kettle sours, right?
True. But I will say this about them. When they decide to do a serious beer, whether it's an IPA, a stout, or whatever, these guys know how to make a good beer.
They do the silly beers well.
Yeah,
I'm not taking that away from them.
If you want to get
I'm just saying this was. I think they did one other. What was it? The Russell's Bramble. Well, I can't remember.
Bramble.
There was a small. It was a small, very small batch where they actually did an aged sour.
But hey, if you want to find a good beer slushy in the summer in Nashville, you go to
those are the
Beers.
guys. Those are the guys.
And like whatever
they may
do,
be going to hell for that, but whatever.
I'm going with them. Hey, at least they'll stay, those beer slushies will keep them cool.
Mark's more qualified.
Yeah. But I thought this one stood out because we were drinking this with a lot of the. I think was it Ale Alchemy or
those were really expensive
the
beers.
$40 bottles, and this one's like $15.
Yeah, it was.
And I think it stood up to all those beers. It
Agreed.
wasn't.
It does. Agreed.
Maybe not as totally complex as some of the ones that were fermented in oak and everything, but this one. They put all the work into it. The flavor came out. It's smooth. It has great characteristics. I really liked it a lot, and I think we gave it a 4 on the show, and I think it's still definitely a 4.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It is. It's got a simple beer. I mean, it's not super hard to approach. I guess I'm not saying
nice white wine.
I'm not saying that right. I mean, I didn't mean it that way. It does have a complexity, but I think it's a super approachable sour.
It's pretty straightforward, you know, for what it is. But there's depth to it.
They did fruited variants of this too.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is just the base beer.
Yeah, it's very clean.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that's I mean, I shouldn't say this, but it tastes like a mixed culture beer from a brewery that does kettle sours. Does that make sense? Like it's got that same sort of clean quality to it, like Mark's
like
describing.
They're not getting as wild. Like maybe those fooders haven't seen a lot of action.
It's a beautiful step into the pool, and I'm glad they made it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've got bottles of it. I bought multiples. At that price. So
it's like when they step up and make a grown up beer.
And it's a 750. We don't see those too often anymore. So
those are going away.
Yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, and
this is a beer I like in that size.
I'm happy that they are not only doing what's trendy, but they're also going back to like really good artisanal roots and making some stellar stuff. I mean,
they did some great clean pilsners.
Yes, they did.
Pilsners were very good.
They did
like I said, like these guys, they put their mind to it. They can make any kind of beer they want.
And they're silly beers, like I said,
but they're
as
silly
good as
beers
any in the country.
But that's what people are buying. Are the silly beers.
They sell every drop they make.
And those silly beers, I still don't think they're going to be around forever. And I think some breweries are not going to be able to transition. That's all they know how to do.
They can only make gummy bear
these guys, when the market changes and it goes a different direction, these guys will jump on it and be right there, and will be able to make good quality beer regardless of what's hot.
Yeah.
Some of their stouts are like phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know?
These guys do coconut better than anybody. I'll say that.
Yeah, the broken nut.
I'm not BSing there. They do coconut better than anybody in this country.
Totally,
any brewery in this country.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But for as kitschy as they could be with some of the beers that they come out with, and believe me, some of their names are very kitschy. And hey,
I like cocktail beers, though. I like those beers. I do.
Yeah.
I do. It's not something I drink a lot of. Though,
sure.
You know.
But they have a good amount of diversity. And I think that's what's going to keep them moving forward in the future is,
good.
You know, the cheesiness, they've got that in spades. But they also have some good base beers. And, you know, you give them a little room and they can produce something as beautiful as this one.
And it's delicate.
It is.
Light on the palate.
That's what I should have said instead of simple. It's delicate.
Yeah, it's very, but it is. And for them being like balls out in flavor a lot of times, stepping back and refraining.
It was surprising. My first sip of it, I was control. Like, okay, I didn't expect that.
But in a great way, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why it was, you know, I thought it stood up to those bigger, more expensive beers.
Sure. There's a subtlety to this that they don't usually do.
Yeah.
And they did it very beautifully
well
balanced.
Put.
There were no Sour Patch Kids in this beer at all.
No cereal.
Yeah, no marshmallows.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a testament to the great brewers that they have.
Yeah, they do.
We'll be back with some more greatest hits in just a minute.
Hey, welcome back to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. On today's episode, we're going through the best of Season 8. Hey, this is good old boy Mike. I'm going to be joining you for this segment, as well as the rest of the co-hosts we've had on the rest of the episode.
So, Mike, why don't you tell us your best of 2020 beer?
So, my best of beer for Season 8 is going to be from Edmund's Oast.
Ooh, South Carolina.
Yeah, so we did an episode on Edmund's Oast really early on in the season, and fantastic brewery. But
I think we said that was one of the best overall flights we've had, like in a long time.
I think it's one of the best we've ever done.
Was super solid.
It was, and you know, that's really when I think of probably who was the best brewery that we had for this year, I would have to give it up for Edmund's Oast. It's pretty rare for us to sit around with a flight of 5 or 6 beers and for us to just go, wow, man.
Yeah.
Even the ones that maybe we rated a little bit lower were still stunning beers, you know. So really great, fantastic beer. But there was only one beer that we had in our entire season where everybody rated this a 5, and that was the Pils.
And that's because
from Edmund's Oast.
We only go up to 5.
And really,
I think I've still got a can of that. I wish I'd known.
Mike would give you $100.
I would. It was really unfortunate that I didn't have that beer to bring for us to enjoy. Once again, unfortunately, the distributor didn't have any, and I think this is just kind of the way that COVID has gone is that, you know, we just haven't seen, you know, the same variety of beers. And, but you know, it was just, there were so many things that I loved about that moment, about that beer. We've talked so much about how difficult it is to make a very simple beer really, really well.
Yeah.
You know,
there's nowhere to hide your flaws.
There is absolutely no place to run, you know, when you are making a Pilsner. I mean, there's just such a basic level of ingredients. It's going to sink or swim, you know, really quick. And for all of us to sit and gush over that beer for, you know, an episode and I'll score a 5. I mean, I have to give it up to, I love Great Pilsner. And I especially like when it's made really well. So definitely a 5 for the Edmund's Oast Pils all the way.
Nice.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Well, the fact that, you know, there was at least one really good IPA.
Yep.
In that, and so there was, I think, a pale ale. There was a Belgian.
Pound in Time,
There was
I think
a blonde.
it's that IPA.
There was a couple of fruited ones. You know, I mean, it's like, for that to not only
it wasn't
stand
even
out,
a single style of beer. Yeah, it was just a wide variety.
Yeah, it was. We had I think we had a brown.
The whole flight was just tremendous. It really was.
Yeah.
And you don't get that often.
And those guys have grown, you know, like they've expanded recently. So it's unusual
and that's
to
what
see.
You were talking about.
Yeah,
like,
it's unusual to see a brewery really hit the ground running after a big expansion.
Because
like
a lot
that.
of times the quality is the first thing that falls off.
It takes them a while to get it figured out.
But that Pilsner was such a great representation of a classic German style Pils.
Yeah.
I think you could take that to Germany to find a bunch of Pilsner lovers, let them taste it blind and go, we made that in America. And they would look at you funny because it's that good.
So that's what I really loved about the timing about that particular beer. And so our friends at the Beer Temple in Chicago actually ran what I thought was one of the best blind tastings I've seen of Pilsners in quite a while outside of a beer competition. And I actually was hanging tough with them. It was like a 3-round deal. I believe they had some 40-odd Pilsners that were in that blind tasting. And it was a round robin style of competition. And it was really fantastic. And unfortunately, the Edmonds O's Pils was actually not in the running. And I would have loved to have seen how well that it would have done within that. One of my favorites from Firestone Walker, People Pils, did very, very well in that competition. But it was interesting. There were actually some, German Pils that were in that competition that hit the States, and several of them actually did not make the top 5. So I was really impressed with how well American brewers were doing of making a European-style beer very, very well. On American soil. So that really, had a really heavy outcome for a lot of brewers to continue to embrace a lot of old world style beers and really make them well here in America.
I think Pilsner is probably one of the original lawnmower beers.
For sure.
Back when your lawnmower was a couple of donkeys pulling a...
I guess I'll say that this is, you guys can disagree with me if you want, but for the last few years, it was rumored to be the year of the lager, right?
Yeah.
So then it seems like, oddly enough, it actually sort of happened this year, and that a lot of really great breweries. Now, I do remember, you guys may not remember this, but when we went to that, festival, the State of Origin Festival.
Oh yeah,
and American Solera were there,
sponsored by.
And they had 2 beers, and one of their beers was a Czech Pilsner. That was just as clean as Granny's kitchen counter. And they said, look, this is like, the other beer took him like 5 minutes to describe. And then he said, this is the beer we drink at the brewery. And I was like, I'll try that one first.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Like,
it was great. I was like, I'm so ready for this style to come,
somebody at that same place did like this rice lager that was like super clean, super cool.
So it's good to see these American breweries. I think they've been poised to do this for a while. So
I think
finally
we got poisoned against, in America, we got poisoned against lagers because
you thought you could hop yourself, into, tackling the American palate. And I think that's really, to me, I really think this is throwing the gauntlet down of saying, make great beer first. You are not going to flavor your way into the American palate.
But like lager was like your dad or your granddad's, crappy macro beer, and if it's like nobody wanted
to get everybody on board
wrapped around that, and it's like, okay, this is what lagers actually are.
The knee jerk reaction most people have to a Pilsner is like, not very complex.
Our ancestors were drinking some good beer. It might not be full of all the bells and whistles, but it was some
doesn't
good
have
beer.
Gummy bears in it. But
it's a couple of other things really kind of caught my attention for the season 8. I love the fact that even in spite of all the challenging components that many brewers face this year, we still had a lot of great quality beer and even new beers being introduced through this year. And so I think the brewers could have made a lot of interesting choices. Some of them, in fact, just packed it in and said, screw it. I'm losing money making beer. I'll just pick this up, in a year from now. And some of them have, made that particular choice. Some brewers have said, I'm just going to not make 20 beers. I'm going to make 5 this year. And I'm going to make stuff that I know that I can sell, that I can still distribute. So I really have to say the innovation and the way that many brewers, continue to operate this year as far as I'm concerned, have probably won the biggest award that I could hand out to them, and that is one for survivability and the measure of fortitude that they've really had to forge through this. I know there have been a lot of breweries that have gone out of business as a result of this year, or have been bought out, and I really have to say that this was a very challenging year from an operational and a business perspective for brewers. And I've seen a lot of interesting things. The fallout with the Brewers Association was probably the one thing that captured everybody's attention.
Heartbreaking.
So much. And we have a lot of good friends that work there at the Brewers Association that are no longer there. And I think they were doing, and will continue to do in the future, such a great job of representing the interests of independent craft brewers. I just think that this was really tough. I didn't realize that such a large percentage of the revenue was driven off of brewery festival events.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's one thing that maybe in the future to diversify, the style of revenue that they have coming in from being so one-dimensional from the festivals themselves and being able to pick a sustainable business model that they'll be able to not be so reliant upon, one particular style of revenue.
Yep.
Well, speaking of beer festivals, the one thing that we didn't do were beer festivals in season 8. And, I really found the amount of beers that I was really sampling this year was incredibly low. I mean, I kind of hauled back through my beer diary thinking about, what was going to be my best of choice. Maybe 200 beers, this year. I usually probably sample somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 3,000. Just stunning. That was, I thought, a real tragedy. But I was thinking about some of the way in which people that are managing and putting on beer festivals have really kind of soldiered through this. And there's a couple of folks that I thought were doing this a little bit better than some others. And I really have to hand out some kudos to a couple of those outfits and a few of those events. Easily at the top of our list already for beer festivals themselves was Rhizome Productions. And, they were really killing it in both local and regional festivals, and had really moved on to managing some national level festivals with the Shelton Brothers festival that was scheduled to take place in North Carolina this year. And unfortunately, not only did the festival get canceled, but Shelton Brothers himself have gone out of business. And
Delayed, Mike.
Delayed?
The festival got delayed.
Delayed? Is that the official word?
We could have gotten a refund.
Oh, I'm sorry. That technical term. What kind of lube is required for that technicality?
They delayed it until they declared bankruptcy.
I really loved the way that all the crew really rallied at Rhizome. They're close friends. In fact, Kendall works very closely on the Rhizome production team, but it's easy for him to step away and look at it objectively and say, wow, did we make the best of a crappy situation?
Yeah, it was a really interesting year for us. We had a festival scheduled for that middle of March, March 13th and 14th in Chattanooga. Yeah. And I mean, I literally had my car packed full of gear ready to go.
Cancel to the last
and
minute.
We canceled it literally at the last minute. I was about to pull out of town, and we transitioned to doing small virtual events, which I've been on most of those. It's been a real pleasure. We feel like people have been engaged. It's been a lot of fun, where people get, cheese and charcuterie and chocolate and beer and swag. It's been a good time. I also personally attended the Untapped Festival, which they used halftime to ship the beer out.
Because it's much larger than what Rhizome's doing.
I was
going to say, compare those two is not really super fair.
Several thousand people, I think, on theirs. But they basically just did Zoom calls. But it was, I thought that was fun. So I've attended virtual festivals and put on virtual festivals and made the best of a bad situation, but I am ready to get back to beer festivals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely thought that the Rhizome Productions really rose to the occasion very well. I was at the Untapped one. I was also on some of the ones they put on for GABF as well as probably some 20 or 30 odd virtual tastings. And I have to say, Matt and company at Rhizome absolutely brought it to the table. I love probably a big thing is they actually brought beer for everybody to taste. But, those charcuterie boards, were almost as tasty as the beer themselves.
I think we should point out that I don't think Matt's doing this. I don't think they're making money at this, right? I mean, there's no way. I mean, like 25 people, sort of limited.
I'll just say it's
sort
a
of
labor of love.
Breaking even. So it's a labor of love here.
It's a way
to
keep the name out there and to stay engaged with our followers.
You got to give appreciation for that alone,
Yeah, true.
It's just to try to keep the flame alight,
Very good.
But it's been awesome. It has. Cool. They've been great.
Well, thanks.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about mine for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yay. Good old gal, Juliana. What was your favorite beer?
Well, okay. Look, I got to be quick
I had like 12.
I know, and I did too. So from Ology Brewing Company, and we recently did an Ology Brewing Company takeover. They are from Florida. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend you listen to that episode. They finally landed in Tennessee, so I didn't have to go to Georgia to get this beer, which I'm really thrilled about. But the beer is called I Drive a Dodge Strata, which is a 6.5% hazy IPA.
Awesome beer, awesome name.
New England IPA, like hazy IPA.
Yep.
With Strata hops.
Yep.
And I absolutely loved this beer because it was New England, but it wasn't completely New England. And they did their own little twist on it. It is a bit hazy. It's just so drinkable, so yummy. And
what would you think the twist is?
They dry hopped it with some Dodge Strata upholstery.
And I rated this a 5.
It's a great beer.
Great beer, Juliana.
Soft as a butterfly's wing.
Yes, that's me. All right. Great stuff, everyone. That's going to wrap it up for today's Sud segment. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you're listening to us online, please do yourself a favor and tap.
Just tap it in.
Tap
it in. Give it a little tappy.
Tap that subscribe button.
Tap that.
The easiest way to listen to our show is to ask Siri, Alexa, Google, or Uncle Larry, play podcast Sips, Suds, and Smokes.
We love your feedback, and you can reach us online at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com.
Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every day at Sips, Suds, Smokes, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. You'll also be able to interact with thousands of other fans on those social media platforms.
And millions.
Do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode. If you're listening to us online, that's a big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Good old boy Caperton.
Hey, it's been fun, everybody. See you next time.
Good old boy Mike.
Hey, we really love Season 8. I'm so glad you joined us today. And come back, join us for another exciting episode and season of Sips, Suds, and Smokes. I'll ask you to keep on sipping.
2021.
Good old boy Kendall.
Yeah, good riddance 2020.
Yeah.
Here's to a better 2021. Cheers.
And please tell us about your blog.
My beautiful wife and I blog about the good news of good beer at beermakes3.com.
Good old boy Dave.
I predict Season 9 will be 9/8 as good as Season 8.
Nice. This is good old gal Juliana. Yes, 2020 is ending. Thank God. And 2021 is ahead of us. To all of the brewers out there, whether you're home brewers, small town brewers, even big town brewers, thank you for all that you've done to keep us sane. Cheers.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.